Yep, it's linking.
I see the message.
Okay, we should now be live streaming to YouTube. Excellent. Perfect. So, yep, and we're recording. All right. Hmm. All right. Sorry, we were getting a feedback there. That was awkward. All of us in a loop. Okay. Well, we know it's working. So I am excited that everyone is here today. I am Dr. Anelia Barnes, and I'm a professor of history at Coastal Carolina University and chair of the Department of History. But more importantly, for our purposes today, I am the advisor for CCU First, a university wide organization dedicated to first generation students. And I'm really excited today about the guests here with me because we have Mr. Robert Thompson from the Office of Financial Aid, or as I call him, the financial aid superhero. And I also have with us the CCU First Executive Committee. So without further ado, we'll just take a moment and introduce everyone. Mr. Thompson, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with everyone this afternoon. My name is Robert Thompson. I am the Associate Director for Client Services and Financial Aid and Scholarships. Basically, client services is kind of that first touch point for our students and parents, where if you have questions, you can call in. We have financial aid counselors. We have assistant directors who assist students and parents with pretty much any type of financial aid question you can think of. We try to answer that, give options, give tips to help navigate the financial aid versus cost scenario that happens on a year in, year out basis. I've been with Coastal for just over a year and a half. Prior to starting here in July of 2019, I actually worked across the street at Horry Georgetown Technical College, where I worked as a financial aid specialist for 4.5 years. So very familiar with financial aid, and no 2 days are the same in financial aid, which makes the job very interesting. So with that, again, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Excellent. And now for our executive committee for CCU First. Go ahead. Caitlin? Courtney?
I'm Courtney Hallam. I'm a junior. I'm a special education major and a French minor. I'm a first generation college student at CCU, and I am the vice president of CCU First.
Excellent. Thank you. Caitlin?
I am Caitlin Hallam. I am an elementary education major and a French minor, and I am the president of CCU First.
And you are not seeing double. There are two of them. And that means we have double the excellent leadership with them. Go ahead, Sean.
All right. I apologize. I'm experiencing a little bit of lag, I think. So my name is Sean Butler. I am a senior history and accounting major with a minor in commercial investment real estate. I am a first generation college student, and I am the treasurer for the CCU First Executive Committee.
Excellent. Thank you. And Benjamin.
I am Benjamin Battolini. I am a freshman music education major. I am also a first generation college student, and I am secretary of CCU First.
Fantastic. And for the record, I'm not lying. I'm also a first generation college student. So this is a cause near and dear to my heart. And as advisor for CCU First, I get a lot of students reaching out to me asking, and they come into whatever sort of crisis, such as especially financial aid issues, right? But also things like, what do I do if I want to change my major? I don't know what to do about this. How do I talk? How do I find my advisor? So students actually reach out for a number of different reasons because CCU First is an organization dedicated dedicated to the first generation student cause. First generation students at Coastal Carolina University are families, the first meaning their parents or guardians, to graduate college with a 4-year university degree. So students who maybe has a parent that went to community college and got an associate's are still, for our purposes, considered first generation because it's not a 4-year degree. Also, students who maybe have an older sibling who has a college degree are still considered first generation because your sibling is in your generation. So I get that question a lot. Those are excellent questions. And the real purpose of CCU is to reach out to this population of students on our campus because they're a significant number, right? Well over 25%, almost 30% of our student body. And we recognize that first generation students are as academically capable as anyone. They have so much going for them, which is why they're here. And we understand their successes and want to celebrate their successes. But we also recognize that even when your family or, been to college, they may not know exactly how to best advise you. And so we're here to fill in those gaps. And the other issue is that, we are often asked, what about continuing generation students? Well, good news, we're for everyone, because for us, this is about community and how we get through this together collectively. So even if your parents or guardians did graduate with a 4-year degree, you're still welcome to join CCU First. We still welcome you and embrace you as part of our community because it is about community building. And because we also recognize, even if a parent did go to college, it was probably 20 years ago or so, somewhere in that area. And we know that a lot has changed, particularly, for example, when it comes to laws governing financial aid or even the need for financial aid. And so this brings us to our primary focus of today. While we often talk about many other issues, today's focus is financial aid. And so without further ado, Mr. Thompson, if you would, share your wisdom, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, I know that, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Dr. Barnes doesn't know this, but I'm actually a first generation college graduate from my family also. It was very much I wish that we had forums like this back when I was in school, from the standpoint of being able to assist, answer questions, because again, we do financial aid in this office every single day. Students, parents, they navigate this sometimes once a year, maybe a couple times a year, just with questions that come up. So trying to retain and like, where do I go? What do I need to do? We try not to take that for granted in our office because we understand this is something that we do every day, but a student or parent doesn't necessarily do that every day. And like I said, even though it was many moons ago for myself, very proud of the fact of being a first generation college graduate in my family. So with that, basically this is not about me. This is about you guys, your organization. I know you have questions that you have prepared. I'm going to talk high level about different things. Then of course, at the end, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. As we're talking, if you have questions, please feel free to jump in if there's a scenario or, just questions. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. That's what I'm here for. And I'm a much better answerer than I am a talker. So from that perspective there, just kind of go down some thoughts that I made for today's session. Number one, with financial aid. Financial aid, mainly through the free application for federal student aid, that is something you do once per year. Sometimes as you're coming in or graduating high school, the emphasis is, complete the FAFSA, do this, see what your award letter is, etc. But don't necessarily realize it's something that you have to do once per year. The Department of Education requires that because they understand a student situation or household situation can change from one year to the next. So they don't want to kind of just say for 4 years, this is what you're going to get and that's all you're going to get. They want you to have the opportunity to be able to look at that year over year because situations can change. So right now, the 21-22 FAFSA is open. It's actually been open since October 1st of 2020. So the Department of Education encourages early completion of the FAFSA. The nice thing, once you've completed a FAFSA, when you go in to complete your next FAFSA, it's really a renewal. So a lot of your information is already captured. You're mainly just updating any income information that changes from one year to the next. If your parents' marital status has changed since your prior year of FAFSA, it allows you to update information like that. But where maybe that original FAFSA took a little longer than you liked, or your parents maybe liked, the renewal FAFSA can actually, it's more streamlined and it can actually go quicker for you. Again, that's been open since October 1st. CCU has a priority deadline of March the 1st to complete the FAFSA. That doesn't mean that we're not going to process FAFSAs after March the 1st. There's different types of awards that the Department of Education, the state of South Carolina kind of earmark to the university. So we have a priority date of March 1st to say, okay, these students who have completed the requirements of the FAFSA, then they're kind of the first in. And these are the ones that we want to give priority to from the standpoint of any of those additional awards outside of the normal federal financial aid based off the FAFSA. Those are kind of set to those students who completed the FAFSA prior to March the 1st. Doesn't mean that after March the 1st, you're not going to be eligible for potential additional grants, awards, but we just give priority to the students that have completed prior to March the 1st. If you didn't know, we actually have a link. I'm going to share my screen. So I'm probably going to do a lot of jumping around today. But with sharing, I'm just sharing my screen here.
Can I interrupt you quickly?
Yes, go right ahead.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Quick question. Is March 1st the priority deadline every single year?
Correct. Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
I mean, things like COVID-19 could change that priority date, but in general, March the 1st is the priority date year over year.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is our financial aid and scholarships page, which is just basically you can go from our home page to admissions and aid. And then when you scroll down here click on financial aid, this is kind of our financial aid and scholarships page. There's a lot of information on this page. But the main reason why I wanted to just show you this is we'll link you to the FAFSA from right here. If you had no clue how to get to the FAFSA website, we'll actually link you to the website for you. When you actually click on that, it's going to take you to studentaid.gov. Basically, it used to be the Department of Education had a website for everything. One for the FAFSA, one for you completing master promissory note, entrance loan counseling requirements for federal direct loans. So they had a lot of different websites, and they've kind of now consolidated all to studentaid.gov, which is nice because you can, from the standpoint of understanding your aid or different types of aid to applying for aid, i.e. completing the FAFSA. Like if there's anything that you needed to do, I know one of the questions was about Teach Grant. If you're eligible for Teach Grant, you actually would complete your counseling and agreement to serve right here. So there's a lot of information on studentaid.gov, but this is where you actually can do your FAFSA renewal. And like I said, we'll link that to you or link that for you directly from our financial aid website, which is nice. You don't have to go looking or writing stuff down. You can actually get there from our website. So with that, go ahead and part of the reason why we encourage early completion of the FAFSA is because the Department of Education randomly selects students for a process that's called verification. We get questions all the time about what did I do wrong with the FAFSA? Why do I have to go through this process? And why am I submitting paperwork? Well, basically, the Department of Education in randomly selecting the FAFSA, it's not that you did anything wrong. In their words or in their mind, it's a random selection. But the main thing is they want to make sure that the information reported on the FAFSA is accurate. And the reason for that is they want to make sure you as the student get the maximum financial aid that you're eligible to receive. Because believe it or not, there is a lot of errors that are made on the FAFSA. And even though everyone makes mistakes, those errors could lead to inaccurate financial aid being awarded, mainly with what we call the federal Pell Grant. We see examples all the time, unfortunately, where a student mistakenly inputs their parent's income as their income, or the parent who's assisting the student with completing their FAFSA, they're thinking, oh, the FAFSA is asking for me, when they're actually asking for the student, because the FAFSA is the student application. So with that, we'll get students who aren't eligible for federal Pell Grant because they listed mom and dad's income total in the student income section and listed it in the parent section. So it's actually double counting. Well, the FAFSA is only as smart as the information that's inputted into the application. So it's just calculating. It doesn't know that there was an error made. It's just reading the information that was actually inputted into the application. So just something to keep in mind, that if you ever have a question about, well, why am I not receiving a grant? We will explain to you why. And sometimes we'll even determine that based off of, in reviewing the application with the student and the parent, we'll determine that the incorrect amount, the FAFSA is not right or not accurate because there's inaccuracies in information that's reported on that FAFSA. But that's why we encourage early completion of the FAFSA, because if you're selected for verification, and the Department of Education says until that process is completed, we can't actually determine your financial aid eligibility for the upcoming academic year. So encouraged to complete the FAFSA. If this may be, well, I've never been selected for verification before, why am I getting selected now? Again, there's not an exact reason as to why, but one of the things that I will look at is inside a web advisor. I'm just logged in, but as the student, I have limited access since I'm not a student at Coastal, but from the standpoint of what the student sees, basically anytime anything is missing, it'll be under missing information for financial aid. Basically, you would click on the link, you would then select the associated award year, which upcoming would be 21-22. If anything's missing, it'll actually show on this page for you. If you have questions about anything that's what's missing or how you submit that, you can contact our office. We'll be more than happy to explain that for you, if that makes sense. One of the main reasons why I'm excited to be here today is a lot of students that will probably be watching this have some sort of merit award or scholarship from Coastal Carolina University. Now, basically, the Office of Admissions, we get the phone calls, but Office of Admissions actually makes the initial merit determination for a student when they apply and they're accepted to Coastal. Now, our office is responsible for reviewing what happens. Is that student meeting renewal requirements after their first year? So that's how you receive this based off what you did in high school, but then you continue to receive it based off what you do at Coastal. So our office actually reviews students each year to make sure that they're meeting the renewal criteria, which typically is going to be, I have an average of 30 CCU credits and a 3.0 GPA. We've had very unfortunate situations where, obviously due to the pandemic, there's situations and reasons why maybe I'm not able to meet that 30 credit hour requirement. A student always has the right to appeal due to mitigating circumstances that maybe has come up. But each year we review that student from a merit standpoint. And because that's why part of the reason why I'm excited being here today is because, you still have a chance to make a difference for this particular semester, which could impact, if you're receiving a merit award from Coastal Carolina, that you continue to receive that going into the next academic year, which would be the 21-22 year. So merit renewals, very important, because that is how a lot of our students, especially first generation students, are dependent upon to continue to offset the education costs each year. So it's something where if there's questions, like a lot of times what will happen is if a student's struggling in a class, they'll talk to their advisor. The advisor, fortunately, way more times than not, will ask them to reach out to financial aid just to confirm what drop in the class may do or may impact, whether it's from their current award or whether it's for potentially, we'll look at even, okay, are you on track to meet renewal requirements, and what kind of impact will this one class have in regards to meeting those requirements. So from that standpoint, this is a very critical time because of we're in the middle of the spring semester, which we'll start looking at renewal after the grades are finalized for the spring semester. So in May, we actually start that review process to determine students are meeting eligibility requirements heading into the next academic year. But again, typically for CCU, it's a 3.0 cumulative GPA, 30 credit hours per year. So at the end of my freshman year, I should have 30. End of my sophomore year, I should have 60. Junior year, I should have 90. Those credits can include if while I was in school, if I was taking AP classes, I was dual enrollment, taking those, any college credits actually count towards that overall average each year, which can be helpful based off the work that you did in high school. Also, just because we do have a lot of in-state students, for purposes of like the Life Scholarship, or if I'm a first-year student and maybe I'm receiving the Hope Scholarship, again, very important because you have to meet, the state requires you meet renewal criteria to continue to receive that that scholarship going into your sophomore, junior, and then your senior year. Typically, the state looks at, or we review all college credit. So whether it was I was taking dual enrollment classes at a local college that transferred in, as well as my Coastal Carolina classes, we actually evaluate both because the state requires that. And typically it's, again, you're looking at 30 credits per year on, it's an average, and a 3.0 GPA. So kind of in lines very similar to what Coastal's merit renewal policy is, but the Life Scholarship, or if I'm receiving Hope first year to transition to the Life Scholarship in year 2, I've got to have 30 credits and a 3.0 GPA. The nice thing actually with both is if for some reason I'm not meeting the renewal criteria after the spring semester, that I can still actually use the summer term to meet that renewal requirement. So let's say maybe I'm a little short, I'm 3 credits short. I only have 27 credits after the spring semester because I was struggling in class. I needed to drop it. So I had 15 credits in the fall. I had 12 credits in the spring. So I'm only at 27 credits. Basically, we'll allow you to take a summer class, whether it's here at Coastal or whether if you don't live locally and you're back home and you're attending a local school, college, where that class will transfer in to Coastal. As long as we get a copy of that final transcript confirming you passed that class. If I was 3 credits short, I earned 3 credits at that in the summer term, then I can use that towards meeting the renewal criteria so that even though I may be a little late, I'm still eligible to receive or meet renewal requirements heading into the next academic year, which would be 21-22. So those are the 2 biggies we get a lot of questions about right now is, am I in danger of losing my merit award? Am I in danger of losing my Life Scholarship? Those are probably 2 of the biggest questions we answer right now. So if there are questions in regards to that, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. This is something that we talk to students every single day. So that's something that we definitely want to work with and get those questions answered for you so you can make the most informed decision, especially if it's something where you're struggling in class. And obviously because the school, due to COVID-19, decided to extend the period that you can actually receive a W for the semester, where it still counts as an attempt from a credit hour standpoint. But if I withdraw from the class and get a W, then there's no impact to my GPA, which a lot of students are more attention focused to, is not impacting the GPA. If there's a question about that before dropping a class, please feel free to reach out to our office because we do get that question a lot.
A quick follow-up question for you there, if I may. So
Yes,
students ask this a lot, and so if they do have to drop and say the spring semester or even the fall, 3 credit hours, and they need 15 that semester, it takes them down to 12. So they need to pick up 3 more hours to, because they only took 15 in the spring. They didn't feel comfortable trying to take 18.
Understandable.
Right, absolutely. And this is something I often caution students about, because I always say it's better to do less well than to do more poorly. So to maintain that GPA that you need to keep these scholarships as well. So can students, you said they can take a class in the summer, they can take it Maymester, they can take it summer 1, can they take it summer too and it still count?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
we call those mini terms or modules. They're all within the summer semester, which runs from May until August. So although you may not see it as an award, because at the moment in time when the semester is going on, we're seeing that you're not meeting renewal requirements. But if I take a summer two class, I pass the summer two class, grades are finalized. Then typically within a couple weeks after that, we'll review, and as long as we can confirm that you're now meeting renewal criteria, we will then basically reinstate that merit award for the next academic year. So although it may be very close, maybe even after the start of the beginning of the fall semester, that we determine or confirm that a student's meeting renewal eligibility criteria, they are still eligible for the award, and they're eligible for the entire year, which means fall of 2021, spring of 2022. So even if we're a little late in reviewing, it's still okay. The student's still eligible. That's the only thing that we're mainly concerned about.
And I often like to remind students, as well as, the chair of a department, I see this a lot when a student has to drop a class. We also have what we call fall two and spring two courses. So if you drop it early enough in the semester, which is usually right at the midpoint, maybe mid-October, early March, then you can still enroll in one of those fall two or summer two sessions for a class and make up those 3 extra hours there. Sometimes that works for students, sometimes it doesn't. We just want students to know that there's a lot of options and that you should be, well aware of how this can impact your financial aid, and aware that there are a lot of options as the university has created for students to make up those hours, and also at times wintermester hours even. So we're working for all sorts of creative solutions to help you all make sure that you're meeting your necessary credit hour goals for your financial aid.
Absolutely. Those are excellent points right there, because our main concern is based off what our institutional policies are, is the student meeting it? Is the student meeting the renewal criteria, or are they not? We hope they are meeting it. And it's tough to communicate as quickly as possible, especially when, grades, like for spring, for example, when grades are going to be finalized mid-May, but then Maymester is going to start right around the same time. That's where we're hoping the student is being proactive and saying, hey, because we send communications out to the student that you may not be meeting or may not meet renewal criteria in the spring, just as a heads up. Now, it freaks the students out, but we would rather them call us and us have a conversation and then they know, versus them not knowing anything and then finding out maybe after the end of the spring term, wishing that, I wish I could have taken this class in Maymester. Hopefully it's available in summer one or summer two, but now it's kind of, I've got some anxiety because I'm in limbo of not potentially receiving that merit award from the next academic year, which is a very important funding solution for a lot of our students here at Coastal. This is probably something that's near and dear to my heart because of these are very tough conversations that our office ends up having with students and parents. So here's the other big thing that we evaluate after the spring semester. So all students who are receiving federal financial aid based off the FAFSA, the Department of Education requires the school to kind of monitor what's called satisfactory academic progress. Basically, with satisfactory academic progress, the Department of Education says if you're receiving federal financial aid, you're receiving federal Pell Grant that you don't have to repay, you're receiving federal direct loans at low interest rates you don't have to repay till after school. We just want you meeting minimum standards towards degree completion. So where a lot of our students, there's actually 3 components. One, I'm going to go ahead and say we don't have a lot of students in this position, but it's called PACE. And PACE just basically means if my bachelor's degree should take 120 credit hours to complete, the Department of Education says, okay, we're going to give you an extra 50% or 60 credits, attempted credits, to reach your 120. So they give you 180 to get to 120 to receive your bachelor's degree. Now, part of that is because we understand students come in wanting to and declare one program, decide to change programs. So they may be behind from the standpoint of classes they need to complete to complete the program that they've changed to, which is okay. We don't get a lot of students that get into that boat of attempt or getting close to the 180 credit hour requirement. However, we do automatically let you know once you've hit 165, basically you need to tell us what's your plan to complete your degree, because you're getting very close to that maximum time frame of 180 credits. We don't get a lot of students like that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time about that. Where we get the majority of students in not meeting satisfactory academic progress is in the other two buckets. One is GPA, the other is percentage of completion. So percentage of completion is the one we get the questions about the most, because basically when I have a class schedule and I'm in my classes, and I don't drop a class during add drop, which is kind of your free first 5 days of the semester to say, don't like this class, or this class is opened up, let me jump in this class and drop this class. You're able to do that and you have no impact because it's during the tuition refund period, there's an add drop period, you can drop, there's nothing reflected on your academic transcript. Now, once you get after the add drop, when you decide to drop a class, and there's valid reasons to drop a class, but if you decide to drop a class, that class doesn't count against your GPA because you get a W, assuming you drop during that period that you can receive a W, but it does account as an attempt. So if I'm in 3 credits, I drop 3 credits, I am 0 for 3. So that 3 credit hour always counts towards my completion percentage. How many attempted hours versus completed hours. And the Department of Education requires that a student complete at least 67% of all attempted hours. So that basically, from a rounding standpoint, if I'm attempting 10 hours, I should complete 7. I'm rounding up to 70. That would be 70 versus 67%. We do that because the Department of Education doesn't round down. And I've had students where they're at a 66.66666%. They're not meeting satisfactory academic progress. They're suspended and they're not eligible for federal financial aid unless they appeal. The other one is GPA. Basically, the Department of Education has a minimum standard of a 2.0 GPA. A lot of your programs of study has a 2.0 GPA required to graduate. So basically, that is if a student, basically we evaluate all students at Coastal after the spring term. So if I'm an incoming freshman, basically I get not a free pass, but basically that fall semester is semester 1. We don't review after the first semester. We always review after the spring semester. Unless you've attended for 4 semesters, then we look at GPA. But typically for all students, that's when we do the majority of reviews for satisfactory academic progress is after that spring semester. What will happen is we will look at basically the completion percentage, or PACE is what the Department of Education calls it, in GPA. If you're not meeting one or the other, we have no choice. It's federal regulation. We have to basically place you on financial aid suspension. We get a lot of students that confuse financial aid suspension with academic suspension. They are 2 totally different things. Financial aid suspension just basically means you're not eligible for federal financial aid, which probably means you're not eligible to continue to receive your merit award or your scholarship if you're receiving life scholarship, etc. So satisfactory academic progress is something that can affect or derail a lot of students here at Coastal. Again, we're at a time semester where you still have the ability to make an impact. There are actually a neat calculators on WebAdvisor where you can look at your cumulative GPA, semester GPA. There's a lot of tools here for you as a student where you can kind of see where you're at, where you need to be, especially as midterm grades begin to come out. But what I would say is, obviously, due to COVID-19, we've all had to adjust over the last year, where just because if you do get placed on suspension for financial aid, you do have the ability to appeal. Our office has been very flexible due to COVID-19, knowing that with the modalities from the standpoint of normal in-person to a stream to totally online. We understand that a lot of it's outside of the student's control, and there's not a kind of a one size fits all model from how a student learns. So even though the Department of Education allows us great flexibilities of how we review appeals, but they don't allow us to waive the requirement for the appeal. So just something to keep in mind, that as you're kind of, getting into March, we're getting ready to hit, in another month, we'll be hitting spring break, and before you know it, the semester will be over. So just kind of keep in mind, if you have questions about, oh, I know I'm struggling, or I know potentially because I'm playing with the GPA calculator that I may have issues after the end of the semester, feel free. We don't review appeals or accept appeals until we know the student's not meeting satisfactory academic progress guidelines. But if you have questions about, hey, this is what I've been dealing with, basically, it's something where we're going to look at if it's something that, if it's a mitigating circumstance, then we'll kind of walk you through kind of different types of documentation that you could use to provide from a supporting documentation standpoint. But it's not something where we want you to feel like all hope is lost because I'm not eligible for financial aid at the moment. Again, we approve a lot of appeals, and that allows the student to basically kind of continue on a probationary basis. It's not quite you're reinstated full blown, but you are eligible to receive, and we review on a semester basis.
Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
No, if you have a
If you
question,
look like you were geared up for something else, excellent. This is so helpful.
Expecting a ton of questions or a question from Satisfactory.
Well, our adoring fans have questions. We have a viewer here on
awesome.
YouTube who's watching right now who asks 2 questions, and I thought I might, go ahead and drop those in so that we can encourage our viewers to continue to share their questions with us. And I hear this one a lot, and I know you do too. Can a student become a resident of South Carolina while working on a degree here?
Yes, they can. Basically, when the Office of Residency, which is located inside of admissions, they are required by the state of South Carolina to classify every student who attends Coastal for tuition purposes as either in-state or out-of-state. So if you go on to the admissions page, there's actually a residency page where you can actually look at kind of what you need from the perspective of reclassifying. So basically, I can apply for my residency status to be reclassified. Typically, like at this stage of the spring semester, basically you're past any type of deadline with residency, but for purposes of leading into the fall semester, you would be able to, or have the ability to apply to be reclassified. There's going to be things that you have to provide and document to prove that you're a South Carolina resident, but it's definitely something that even though maybe initially you were classified for tuition purposes as out of state, it is something that there's no waiting time period to request to be reclassified. So for example, typically for a dependent student, if I'm a dependent of my parents, because my parents, claim me on their taxes, et cetera. Let's say a parent retires to the state of South Carolina and they are receiving retirement, and they have proof of domicile in South Carolina. There are kind of rules from the standpoint of how long you have to have domicile. Typically it's 12 months, but there are exceptions. And so if I'm retired or my job moved me to South Carolina, those are exceptions to the normal 12-month rule. So that's enough for me to, get myself in trouble. But for purposes of the actual question, yes, you can request to be reclassified for tuition purposes.
That's really helpful because I do hear that question a lot, and I'm really glad that our viewer asked that because students are often wondering, and they also feel like there's no opportunity for that. So to know that there are options, I think, could be really helpful. A second question is, are there options mid-semester to take out student loans for an unexpected educational expense?
Very good question.
It is a good question. I agree. I just want to say shout out to our viewer for these excellent questions because I get this one a lot. Students who are panicked, they don't know what else to do, and I call Robert. But so go ahead.
And I welcome those phone calls. Just I don't want you or the student to ever feel panicked though. But I understand feeling panic when an unexpected expense comes up. Before I jump to that, this is just I just wanted to share the residency page under the admissions homepage. So this is where you can kind of look at in-state residency determinations, residency deadlines, which are very important, frequently asked questions. And then it kind of talks about the application process and based off the term, what your deadline is. So again, if you have questions after reviewing the page or the frequently asked questions, the residency department welcomes you to reach out to them. They're in the same building that we're in here in Baxley, so you can email or you can call if you have questions. But their office, based off submissions or requests for reclassification, their office would actually review that. So in regards to the question about loans during the semester, so normally when we award a student, especially based off of loan eligibility based off their FAFSA, that's your loan eligibility is driven by your grade level. So depending on if I'm dependent or independent, majority of our students are going to be dependent students. So the amount of loans via subsidized and unsubsidized loan you're eligible to receive, you're normally already going to be awarded the max. However, if I'm a continuing student, and let's say because it's based off grade level. So even though you may think of yourself as a sophomore, if you actually don't earn 30 credits during your first year at Coastal, for purposes of your federal direct loans, you're still classified as a freshman until such time as you kind of cross over that 30 credit hour threshold. Just think about it as 30, 60, 90, 120. So even if I only had 29 credits, but let's say after the fall semester that just passed, I passed 12 credits. So now I went from 29 credits to 41 credits. Well, now I'm officially a sophomore in the Department of Education's eyes. So the difference in grade level from freshman to sophomore is $1,000. So I may have been awarded $5,500 in federal loans as my second year at Coastal, but I only received $5,500 because of the number of credits I earned my first year. When I cross over 30 completed credits, I actually am eligible for an additional $1,000 via subsidized loan. So you can actually request. We don't automatically award that to the student because we don't ever want to assume the student wants any more debt than they need to have when they're done with school. However, the student can request through our office either via email, or we have a loan request form the student can complete, requesting that additional $1,000 that they're eligible to receive because they've crossed over from less than 30 credit hours to more than 30 credit hours. So they're going from 5,500 in eligibility to 6,500 in eligibility. Then once I cross over 60 credits, basically as a junior and senior, it's the same. It's 7,500 per year. So if you've already received the maximum loan award for the year, doesn't necessarily mean you're not eligible for any more. If you're not sure from the amount of credits that you've earned, you can always contact our office and say, hey, I wasn't sure if I'm eligible for additional loan funding based off my number of completed credits. We can review that and discuss that with you. Typically once I've been awarded as the student, my subsidized and unsubsidized loans, then basically your two options. One is my parent can apply for what's called a Parent Plus loan with the Department of Education. So as a student, you're awarded your eligible federal direct loans based off completing the FAFSA and meeting eligibility requirements. The parent has the ability to apply for a Parent Plus loan with the Department of Education directly. It's an online application. Actually, if I go to the studentaid.gov website, So under apply for aid, I can actually, as a parent, apply for a Parent Plus loan here. As the parent, because I'm applying, I would actually log in with my FSA ID, which as the parent is the same information I use to electronically sign the FAFSA. It's an online application that basically takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete. Basically, at the end, the parent submits to a credit decision, or a credit inquiry. It's a spot credit check. Within 30 seconds, the parent has a credit decision. We have confirmation of the credit decision within 24 hours. And then we award appropriately based off that credit decision. So if parents approved, we would award up to eligibility requirements for that plus loan. A lot of things the student doesn't understand is if the parent's not approved, because the parent, for whatever reason, doesn't meet the credit requirements of the Department of Education. Department of Education says don't penalize the parent because don't penalize the student because the parent doesn't meet our credit criteria. So basically, in those situations, the student, the dependent student's eligible for additional unsubsidized loans for the semester or a year based off that parent credit decision not being approved. So a lot of times the student's not aware of that option unless they've contacted our office and spoken to a financial aid counselor. But if my parent hasn't applied at all, well, the parent can actually apply, and parent may say, hey, maybe I don't have the best credit, I won't be approved. Well, that's okay. If the parent's not approved, that still means the student can receive additional unsubsidized loans for the semester or for the year.
This is really helpful. I really appreciate that point because I have heard not only recently within the last month, but also multiple times now, students say, I have no other options because my parents have poor credit and there's really nowhere else I can turn.
Yes.
So I think that is a critical thing to know.
It is.
What is the same true if a parent just flat out refuses to take out the loan in his or her name?
What I always say to the parent, unfortunately, unless there's a specific reason why the parent can't take, like they got approved, but they're not able to take out the loan. For example, this is a special circumstance that we see in our office sometimes. Because again, we don't know what the Department of Education's criteria is. They just tell us they do a spot credit check. Well, we have had parents who were applied and approved, but maybe for whatever reason, they're in the midst of a bankruptcy. And the terms of the bankruptcy says they can take out no new debt. Well, obviously, because even though we have a credit approval and we confirm that based off of the bankruptcy filings, the parent can't take out additional debt, then that's something where we would kind of override that approval and award the additional unsubsidized loans the student's eligible to receive. But normally, when the parent just can't say, I don't want to take out the loan, they have to, I tell parents, you can at least apply because you really don't know whether you're going to be approved or not. If you're approved, you don't have to take it. But then you have to kind of come up with a plan B if you are approved, but you don't want to incur the Parent Plus loan obligation. Then we want to, then we would have to look at an alternative for the student, which after the Parent Plus loan, then really the other option is a private loan through a private lender. And I just call a private lender anyone in the Department of Education. So examples of private lenders like Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, Discover. These are all lenders who extend student loans to students. They just have their own criteria. And that private loan could be with, in the name of the student, with a parent as a co-signer potentially. It doesn't have to be the parent though. It can be any person that is a qualified co-signer, which just basically means that co-signer meets the credit criteria established by the private lender. It does not have to be mom and dad. There's this misperception that if I as a student go apply for a private loan and the lenders require me to have a co-signer, it has to be mom and or dad. It does not. It can be any other family member. It can be a close friend of the family. It just has to be someone that meets the credit criteria of the lender in question.
So I have another good question from our viewer. We're coming up on the hour, so I know we've had you busy. So we're gonna ask this question from our viewer. If any other viewers have questions, go ahead and post them. And we're gonna let, if you don't mind, go ahead and let our students here ask some questions from, because this student perspective, they think of things I just never do. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then let you sort of fill in any final things that you want to make sure you get out there, because this is just fantastic information and really appreciated. So our viewer asks, what if a student hasn't taken out loans that they're eligible for? So maybe they've gotten some sort of scholarship money, they've gotten some Pell Grant, right? And so they declined student loans, but then figured out, oh no, this is not going to cut it. I need help stat. Can those students go ahead and take out funds later in the semester?
That is an excellent question. The answer is yes. As long as the student at the time of requesting the federal loans, as long as the students meet eligibility requirements, they are eligible to take out the loan. So for what I mean by that. So let's say that I'm eligible for $5,500 for the year. Normally that's going to be split equally, $2,750 for fall, $2,750 for spring. I'm in a fortunate situation where, for whatever reason, 529 plan, scholarships, internal, external, etc., I haven't had the need to take loans. Good for that student. Now something's come up unexpected where they're like, ooh, I need to use my federal direct loans for the year. So basically, as long as the student is enrolled at the time of the request in at least 6 credit hours inside of your program of study, or we call Title IV hours. So as long as basically I'm enrolled in 2 classes that are inside of my major. You should be enrolled in more than 2 classes, but this is the Department of Education requirement. So as long as you're meeting the definition of half-time enrollment, you are eligible to take up to the full award year amount, as long as your cost of attendance allows for you to do so. So you can borrow, you don't have to take the full amount. You can say, I need X. And if X is between $1 and your loan eligibility maximum for the academic year, you can take that at any time, as long as the semester has not ended and you're still enrolled at least half time. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. Wonderful.
A lot of students think that, oh, if I don't use it, I lose it. And it's no, you've done the right thing by not needing it and you rejected it. But at any time you can request to reinstate a loan or loans. I'll have students that will say, because they don't know the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized, they'll say one versus the other. We're going to award the student based off what they're requesting, what's in their best benefit. So even though I may only need $1,000 and I inadvertently say unsubsidized, well, we're automatically going to award that as subsidized, because subsidized is, I guess, the better of the two, because the subsidized loan has no interest accrual as long as I'm meeting the halftime enrollment requirement, which basically means the Department of Education is paying the interest on your behalf. So we're always going to give you the subsidized first, the unsubsidized second, unless you're asking for the full amount at one time. That's a great question.
Yep. Excellent. Fantastic. All right. So let's go to our executive committee here. Caitlin, El Presidente, you want to lead off with a question that you might have? I'll let you select your sort of greatest hit question. What do you have for us?
Okay. I had the live stream going, so I'm one of the viewers. So
Yeah.
one of the ones that I had was, so on the FAFSA, it talks about work study jobs and asks if you're going to apply for one. So what is a work study job, first of all? And how do they work? And when should I try to get one, if I should try to get one?
Good question.
Great question. So basically, federal work study is where the Department of Education allocates monies to the school and says, okay, if you have a budget of X amount of dollars that you can use to be able to pay students who work on campus. That's what federal work study is. So basically, we get an allotment from the Department of Education. So for example, in our department, as in a lot of departments, we have what we call student workers. Student workers are hired through HR. They are paid a pay stub normally once every 2 weeks, and they receive a W-2 at the end of the year. That is what a work study job is. A lot of the times we will get questions about, I didn't indicate on my FAFSA that I was interested in work study, but I am. Well, that's okay, because basically all of our open positions are posted on our HR website. So even if I didn't say yes to federal work study on the FAFSA that I was interested in work study, but yet I apply, and before HR makes, I guess, the final, where the department's ready to make a decision on an applicant, they will check with us. We have one of my coworkers actually kind of oversees federal work study, and they will basically confirm, is this student eligible for federal work study? So basically, in a nutshell, we build a cost of attendance for every student here at Coastal Carolina University. A cost of attendance, without getting too technical, is basically a budget. It's direct expenses like you're aware of, like my tuition, housing, meal plan. But it's also indirect expenses you're not necessarily paying to Coastal on a semester by semester basis. For example, transportation. I got to travel from school back home during breaks and during the summer. We have a budget component for that for the year. Personal expenses. I need to buy a laptop. So this is all in the student's cost of attendance. So what we do is we take the cost of attendance, we subtract out all resources. So financial aid, merit, which can consist of my merit awards, my scholarships, my external scholarships, etc. That difference between the cost of attendance and all of my award or resource is what's called an unmet need. If the unmet need is greater than 0, you're eligible for federal work study. So basically, if I'm applying as a student for a job and I'm hired, then you can be paid out of what's called the federal work study bucket. Really not important to the student, but for purposes of just answering the question, that's kind of how technically federal work study works. But there's actually 2 types of work study. So we get an allotment, as in Coastal, from the Department of Education, but Coastal itself may have institutional department awards or grants that they're using to pay students. So they may have through a grant, they may have funds they need to pay out of that grant to pay student workers in their department. So again, for purposes of the student, it really doesn't matter which bucket it's paid from, as long as it's a job that the student wants to do, and from the standpoint of the hours and the work schedule as it kind of mixes in with the class schedule. Basically, you don't need the okay from financial aid to apply or be eligible for federal work study. You just have to be eligible to be hired as an employee. And if there's any confirmations that need to occur as it pertains to federal work study, that the HR will basically check with us to confirm that the student's eligible.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Butler, you're up next because that's the order you're in on my screen.
Sure, I'll go ahead and go. So my question is, and as someone who knows firsthand from this experience, speaking for scholarships and applying for them, what can a student do to best prepare themselves to earn a scholarship? They have a lot of requirements, essays, personal statements of that nature. What can, I as a student do to help better my chances of earning that scholarship?
That's a great question, and actually one where I wanted to make sure of a hot topic that I don't forget to mention while we're on this session tonight. So for purposes of Coastal, we're actually in the midst or towards the end of what's called application-based scholarships cycle number 2. So basically inside of WebAdvisor, which I have pulled up on my shared screen, you can go under financial aid and you can click on apply for application-based scholarships. That link will only be there until March the 15th. At 5:01, that link will disappear because that's when cycle 2 will be closed. So as a student, when I click on that link, I'm automatically matched based off GPA, my major. I'm automatically matched to potential scholarships through our Coastal Education Foundation. And all I have to do as a student is read the minimum criteria. If I feel like I meet the minimum criteria, I check a box, I hit submit, that puts me in the applicant pool. How you can be best prepared for scholarships, just overall, not just the application-based scholarships, is a lot of scholarships, not only through our ABS cycle 2, but even where I've seen through external scholarship searches, normally requires some sort of an essay. So what I would do if it was me as a student is I would kind of have a one go-to essay that I can then tweak based off what the specific scholarship's asking for. So I know that in obviously Academic Resource Center, et cetera, we have tools available to assist students with essay writing, et cetera. But what I would advise, instead of creating like 10 different essays, create one kind of go-to essay that it's easily, you can tweak to kind of fit the requirements of what the scholarship's asking for. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
That's excellent advice. Yeah, I think that helping students know, even if you just write out a personal statement of application, sort of that just outlines what you have accomplished academically so far and what your future goals are. Those are really common questions, right, on scholarship applications. Am I right, Mr. Thompson? Sort of like a standard criteria that gets repeated a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Especially from the standpoint of like, why isn't college, why is college important to you? I mean, you could talk for, I'm sure you could talk hours on end about that. But think about, questions like that if you were asked, how would you respond to that? That's a lot of what I see with a lot of different essays, just trying to recreate the wheel every time. Is to have something it's easily formatted, but that you can just kind of go down and say, ooh, okay, they're looking for this, and maybe I said this and I need to replace or tweak that. That's what I would recommend, because they're looking for, yes, they're looking for content, but they're looking for format. And can you easily through the essay say I'm meeting the minimum requirements that the scholarship is asking for. I know just from an external scholarships standpoint, I mean, I know like one of the search engines, it's called FastWeb, where as a student, I can go on to FastWeb and basically I can create a profile. Well, FastWeb is a nationwide database. So if I have a very generic profile, I'm in a gigantic pool of other applicants. Whereas the more specific I can make my profile, the more I'm going to narrow that applicant pool, which will increase my chances. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to get a ton more scholarships, but my advice always to students is make your profile as specific as possible, so that for purposes of potential scholarships, if they're looking for, someone who's left-handed, well, if I have that in my profile versus someone that doesn't specify that makes it more, more specific for what they may be looking for from a scholarship requirement standpoint.
That's excellent advice. And I tell students often, do that early, do it now if you think you're interested in applying for scholarships, because it'll give you time to really think about how to craft it and not do it rushed, and give a professor who's willing to work with you time to review it, give you feedback, and you incorporate that feedback, right? You'll be surprised how many professors are actually willing to help with that sort of thing too. And there's no writing that, we'll just say is least fun to do than writing about yourself.
Right. Agreed 150% on that.
So trying to write about yourself and say what you've done and sound humble and all of those things, it's tricky and not so there's lots of tips and tricks to that. And I also find when I review these sort of personal statements that students write, the interesting thing is they're often too humble. They often forget the sort of things they've done that everyone wants to hear about. What organizations were you a part of? What classes do you think really matter in terms of your future and what you're doing right now, or the purpose of the scholarship, all sorts of things. Anyway, so helping you with that, as well as the resource center, the writing resource center, that Mr. Thompson mentioned, and career services. Career services is doing a lot
Absolutely. That's a
to help with this sort of thing too. Yep. Yep.
Let me
Excellent.
make
Good
sure
question.
that I do emphasize that with our cycle 2, because this is the question not only from our continuing students, but from from students who are recently accepted for 2 coastal, is trying to plan out a year in advance. That's my other piece of advice is, like, right now we have cycle 2 that's about to end in 2 weeks. That's it for the purposes of anything through our Coastal Education Foundation. Basically, when cycle 2 closes, it will be reviewed by our scholarship committee, and all awards for 21-22 scholarship wise will be done by May 1st. So if I get a call from a prospective student or a continuing student saying, hey, I'm really struggling, what's out there for me? And I'll ask, did you apply at either cycle 1 or cycle 2? And they're like, I didn't think about it, wasn't aware of it, etc. That's the thing where when we get to, mid-May, it's too late. We've already allocated all funds that we have available to us. So I would definitely, if you haven't taken a look inside of WebAdvisor, click on application-based scholarship cycle 2. All you have to do is just read the minimum criteria. If you feel like you meet the minimum criteria, submit. Even if something happens that we determine that you didn't meet it, I would much rather you submit it. If you weren't sure, but you felt like you met it, I would much rather you submit it and let the committee review it versus you not submitting it at all. And again, because this is for 21-22, absolutely can't emphasize enough that go ahead and take a look at that if you can over the next week, because again, a lot of those scholarships will have essay requirements potentially, and want to make sure you have enough time to not only submit the application, but to submit any additional requirements, which must all be in 15th at 5 p.m.
Excellent advice. Because we're not kidding when we say there's worlds in which scholarships sometimes sit empty because nobody thinks they're qualified and nobody applies. So if you think you even rub up near it at all, throw your hat in the ring, right? Make them tell you no is my rule. Yep.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. We're getting close to hour and 15-ish now. So Courtney, if you can bring us home with one additional final expert question, that'd be great.
Okay, sir, you were talking about loans before. So do you have any tips for when it's time to repay the loans?
Great question. Yes. Basically what happens with your, and I'm going to talk to the federal direct loans first and then private loans. So federal direct loans, what will happen, again, normally once you're done with school, you move from kind of your in-school deferment to your grace period. You get 6 months. During that 6-month period, you will actually be notified by the servicer or servicers for your federal loans. And that's where you'll kind of have a summation of, here's how much you've used or borrowed, here's your repayment options. And you're going to have a lot of options. It's not just going to be one option. There's not going to be just a pay us this for 10 years or 20 years. You're going to have a lot of different options. What I would advocate to is don't kind of, I know when I came out of college, I was appreciative of having the options, because although I know I didn't want the debt and I wanted it gone in 3 years, I knew 5 years would probably maybe fit my budget better as I was kind of getting into the workforce. So what my tip would be, don't, even if you can't stand the thought of having the debt, don't kind of extend yourself from committing to a payment. So I would say take the most manageable payment you feel like is doable, because knowing that these loans have no prepayment penalties, you can overpay as much as you want anytime that you want. But from the standpoint of myself being more disciplined, I said, give me the comfortable payment. I'll pay additional each month so that I can still pay this off in my time frame based off what, financially is allowable for me to do. And that's going to change. That's what I like about the different repayment options that you'll receive is there'll be if you just want a straight payment for 10 years, you can have that. If you want kind of a graduated payment that goes up based off assuming your income is going to go up, every 2 years, they can do that also. If you want one that's purely just based off your income, they can do that. They can do that also. The nice thing is you're not tied to, if I pick this and decide I need to change, you can change. The biggest thing is you just have to communicate with the lender. They may have requirements from the standpoint of completion of forms or requests from changing from one repayment type to another. But my biggest tip would be choose the payment that is most comfortable, that meets your kind of, timetable and stomach level from the standpoint of repayment, and don't overcommit yourself. The other big thing is communicate with the servicer. Especially if nothing else, I was big on this before COVID-19, but now more than ever, the servicers are understandable that they know that, hey, there's going to be, I had this job, I lost this job. And so I was working this income, now my hours are reduced. Now more than ever, they're hearing that every single day, and they are working with students who are in the repayment phase of their student loans. So I would say communicate, let them know what's going on. If you don't talk to them, their assumption is you just don't want to pay. And when you never want the assumption to be you don't want to pay, because that's where bad things can happen, which can impact you from a credit standpoint, from, long term of wanting to buy your car, dream home, not talking to the lender, and the lender just assuming that you're not wanting to make payments is the worst thing decision-wise that can happen. They want you to talk to them. They're there to help you and assist you. So my two big tips would be, don't overcommit yourself to a payment when you get out of school, and communicate with your lender if things are not going as you anticipated. They will work with you. I've seen outside of what has been in the COVID relief bills in regards to loan pauses or pauses on interest accruing, et cetera. Outside of that, they will work with students in regards to out of school deferment or forbearance because you had a job, lost your job, haven't found a job yet. They are there. They can work with you to make sure that there's not negative impacts to your credit, but you're not required to make payments you can't afford to pay. But the biggest thing they're looking for is for you to actually communicate with them. So that would be my second big tip would be communicate. And then obviously the first tip is don't overextend yourself from the standpoint of committing to a payment. And like with private loans, I would say, again, don't make assumptions. Ask questions to the lender from the standpoint of what your true repayment options are once you're done with school and it's time to enter into the repayment phase of your student loans.
Excellent. Wonderful. And those repayment options are, there's a list, right? When you're worried about what a repayment option might look like, you don't know what to do. This is wonderful advice because you can have income-based repayments so that it literally takes into account how much income you even have. So rather than just, give up or don't think you can do it or, get too frustrated, like he said, talking to your lender, talking to direct loan or whoever you have it with to really get it taken care of is critical to your future financial success. So excellent advice.
And what I would add, like when we know you're coming up on graduation or you have graduated out of our system, we actually will notify you to complete what's called exit counseling. Exit counseling on the front end, you do entrance counseling. And basically that's for the high level. Here's the difference between a subsidized versus an unsubsidized loan, allows you to kind of plug in estimated loan amount, let you see the repayment options. That's in the beginning when you start school. Then when you're done with school, you actually go through exit counseling, which is kind of, again, now of okay, I know that I've borrowed X amount. and here's going to be my repayment options that are going to be available to me. But the nice thing is on studentaid.gov, you can actually go ahead and simulate that if you're that curious. So where I've shared, I'm on the studentaid.gov page, you can actually go under manage loans, and you can, if you're not sure, you can find out who your servicer is. You can do exit counseling, or you can just do a loan simulator. So you can plug in a hypothetical loan amount, and it'll let you see what the repayment options that are available to you. But then if you're having issues and you need to kind of switch, or you need more of an income driven repayment plan versus the standard repayment options that are provided, that's where you can request this through federal student aid, and they'll work with you through the servicer to get the most comfortable payment that is going to be affordable for you based off your current situation at the time that you're requesting.
Fantastic. All right. Are there any questions that you guys really feel like is a burning issue we need to address right now? No? All right. Well, we have a minute or two left. Mr. Thompson, if there's anything that you would like to share as parting wisdom before we go, I would, the floor is all yours.
Sure. Well, again, I appreciate the time and everybody being a part of this session today. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been a lot of great questions, a lot of great information. What I will say, because I see the very last question on the questions that was provided to me today. So due to COVID-19, obviously there's a lot of the campus that's restricted from the standpoint of students and meeting. However, like for financial aid purposes, the only restrictions we have is how many people we can have in our suite at one time. So normally we're here from 8:30 to 5 if you have questions. If you're most comfortable by phone, as a lot of students and parents have become, you can call our office from 8:30 to 4:45 is kind of, we have a call center and we answer all calls that are in the call center before 4:45 before we leave for the day. So feel free to reach out to us. If you're more comfortable meeting in person, we welcome you to come. We're in Baxley Hall on the second floor. We like to work by appointment only. We don't require it. Obviously, if we do, just because of the number of people we can have in our suite at one time, if we do have an appointment already scheduled, you're welcome to wait, and we're more than happy to help you or get your questions answered. But if you want to schedule an appointment, just so you know, when you come in, you're not going to have to wait. You can call and schedule that via phone, or you can email us at our general financial aid mailbox, which is FINAID, so short for FinAid, at coastal.edu. You can request an appointment that way. But we're here. Like I said, we meet with students and parents every day. We adhere to CDC guidelines for social distancing, et cetera, but we're here and able to help, whether it's via phone, via email, or in person. And then other than that, last thing I'm going to share, this is something that our director actually kind of spearheaded because it's very important to her. She's also a first generation college graduate. On our financial aid and scholarships page here on the right hand side, we actually have, and I found this very, very cool. We actually have a financial literacy facts and tips. And so when you click on that, it kind of opens up different topics from the standpoint of creating a personal budget, saving money. Nobody wants to, sometimes, feel like money is burning a hole in your pocket and you got to spend it on something, but it's very important, especially at this stage of college, to have a focus on saving money, because it will not only serve you well from the standpoint of in college, but greatly once you are done with college and enter into the full-time workforce. Debt and credit management, loan repayment, which we were just kind of talking about, and then just some financial literacy facts. So this is a page I would encourage you to check out. Again, a lot of it, it's just she's very passionate about it. And her doctorate degree is based off of that. So it's something that she wanted to make sure that our students had the ability at their fingertips to be able to utilize and kind of take a look at. If you have questions, of course, please feel free to contact our office, and we'll be more than happy to provide any information that you have. But please check out the financial literacy. I think it's something that, again, it's one of those things. I can speak from experience. I kind of learned on the fly once I was done with college. I wish I had received this while I was in school to kind of start thinking about budgets, saving, because it will serve you very well once you finish school and enter into the workforce.
Wonderful. Yes, and actually, Samantha Hicks, right, our director, she came and spoke to CCU First last year for us and talked about financial literacy and
Awesome.
was really helpful. Yeah, so I love the work that she's done, and I love that she has provided this tool for students because, even $5 at a time adds up, and it's, just like it disappears quickly in small chunks at a time. It adds up in small chunks at a time too, if you can make it happen. So
Right.
anyway, I think that this is a great note to end on. I want to say thank you so much, Robert, for joining us. You're fantastic. I'll let you take your cape off for the night and relax before you have to put it on and save people again tomorrow. And I just appreciate that you've been such a wonderful go-to resource for students, first generation students, like I said, who call me, they don't know what to do, and I get them in touch with you and the things that you've done for them. And I like to share that story a lot because, it encourages students to realize there is a place they can reach out and get information. If they don't know what to do, we can certainly help with that. So, and my email is abarnes, so ABARNES @coastal.edu. And students who have questions are always welcome to reach out to me as well. And boy, I've just seen the great work. And the other thing is students who are just so confused, right? They just don't know. They got information from my financial aid and they just don't know what it means. They don't know what they're supposed to do with it. And that is okay. We are here to demystify what can be a very confusing process. So ask early, ask often, and then keep asking. And that's why we're here, right?
That's exactly why we're here.
Yep. So thank you all again. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our video. But thank you. Thank you. So our recording has stopped. You guys, whew, work. Hang on.